So here's something interesting. Elon Musk's SpaceX venture, Starlink, has revolutionized internet access in many parts of the world, with its constellation of low Earth orbit satellites offering high-speed, low-latency internet. But it's still not available in South Africa. So I'm here to unpack to you the why. Yes, it's got government involved, but let me explain. In fact, before I even get there, just recently, Zimbabwe became the 8th African country to license Starlink to provide satellite internet services in a deal involving one of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's close associates, Tricky. President Mnangagwa made the announcement around the 25th of May this year, as he revealed that Starlink would partner with a local company, IMC Communications. The company is owned by Wicknell Chivayo, who is regularly seen with the president. However, Starlink will only be accessible through Chivayo's company, which received the licensing rights from the Postal Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. This information is key for you to understand. Starlink has local partners in Zimbabwe. Keep that in mind as this video progresses. So what is Starlink? Starlink is a constellation of thousands of low Earth orbit satellites that are significantly closer to Earth than traditional satellites. Elon Musk has been launching these into orbit for many years at a much faster and cheaper rate due to him having a technological advantage through his space company. The proximity of these low Earth orbit satellites translates into faster speeds compared to traditional satellite internet. Starlink also offers significantly faster download and upload speeds, potentially reaching well over 100 megabits per second. Another advantage is low latency, where latency is the amount of time that it takes for data to travel. Starlink's lower latency allows for smoother video conferencing, online gaming, and real-time applications to run faster than from other links. Starlink also offers a wider coverage. The sheer number of Starlink satellites in orbit promises broader internet access reaching remote areas often underserved by traditional terrestrial infrastructure. However, South Africa, despite its significant need for improved internet connectivity, remains absent from Starlink's operational map, but Zimbabwe is. Many want to make it a complex issue, but it's actually really simple. I'll explain. The most significant hurdle for Starlink in South Africa is the lack of a proper operating license from the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA, the National Telecommunications Regulator. They require all companies offering satellite internet services to acquire a license in the country. While Starlink has expressed interest in entering the South African market, it hasn't formally applied for a license as of June 2024, or even the making of this video. But here's where things get even more interesting. ICASA has cautioned companies against importing and selling Starlink user terminals. They've even called it flat out illegal. Some people have been known to go across the border into countries that have Starlink, like Mozambique, and then they come back into South Africa, install these, and use them illegally. Starlink, on the other hand, claims that they are abiding by international regulations, and they've accused South African resellers of violating its terms of service and copyrights by using Starlink logos to market unauthorized resales in the country and even in neighboring countries. This creates a catch-22 situation. Starlink can't operate in South Africa without a license, but ICASA may not issue one until Starlink complies with local regulations regarding resellers and other operational aspects. One of those operational aspects is BEE. Triple BEE, or Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, is a policy that all companies operating in South Africa must adhere to. This policy aims to redress historical economic inequalities by requiring companies operating in South Africa to have a certain percentage of ownership or management positions held by black individuals. Generally, this is around 30% at a minimum. While the exact details of the Starlink's potential non-compliance with Triple BEE remains unclear to a lot of us, it's been cited as a reason for the delay in obtaining the license. Ensuring some level of BEE compliance and adherence demonstrates a commitment to inclusivity and will also align with the national development goals of South Africa. However, it's important to note that triple BEE-like requirements are often points of negotiation with foreign companies entering the South African market. And Starlink has in some areas adhered to these requirements, like in Zimbabwe. Finding a middle ground that satisfies both Starlink's ownership structure and South Africa's empowerment goals is the only way forward. At least that's what it looks like to me. While Starlink offers potential advantages, there are cost considerations to take into play. For instance, hardware. The Starlink user terminal kit, which includes a dish, a router, can cost around $600 or 10,500 Rand approximately. Then there's also subscription fees. These fees can range from $100 to $500, 1,700 Rand to almost 8,700 Rand. This will obviously depend on the data plans that you choose. For urban areas with more established fiber optic and cable internet options, these costs might seem excessive. However, for more remote communities with limited or no internet access, Starlink could be a game changer. But the price is high and it's such a great barrier to climb. The potential benefits for rural South Africa are undeniable. Having Starlink would bridge the digital divide. Starlink could connect previously isolated communities, enable access to education, healthcare resources, and economic opportunities that exist online. It can also empower rural businesses through creating reliable internet that can open doors for e-commerce, remote work opportunities, and improved communication within rural communities. However, the affordability factor has to be looked at here because it presents a significant challenge. The upfront cost of the user terminals and the ongoing subscription fees could be prohibitive for many low-income households in rural areas. So technically, the only rural people who would be able to afford this would be the likes of commercial farmers and people of that ilk. So the argument that Starlink could help rural communities in its current form falls flat at the door. It's just not geared for our type of rural communities and even their affordability. Like many other countries have the right to protect their industry, South Africa has the right to do the same. I really like what Elon is doing here for the world, but there are rules to everything, and US companies know this. Why is it suddenly different when they must operate in Africa, specifically South Africa, a more developed and well-regulated market? We know how to do business here and how to do it properly. The other thing is that ICASA has the responsibility to ensure a fair and competitive telecommunications landscape. While Starlink boasts innovative technology, our existing providers like Vodacom, MTN, and other fiber network operating companies like maybe even a Dark Fiber Africa, Vumatel, Liquid Telecoms, and many others, these companies have invested heavily in infrastructure and they've established a base for their customers. They have adhered to the laws of this country and they also pay taxes. This thing is easy, man, guys, but Starlink is making it incredibly hard and even more complex than what it needs to be. And also a lot of media in South Africa, they want government to do what they want, and that actually wouldn't be fair at all. Please, actually, you know what? Let's have this conversation in the comments. A sudden unregulated entry by Starlink into our market could disrupt it, potentially leading to job losses and instability in the entire sector. On top of that, ICASA needs to ensure that Starlink operates within our established regulations. The laws are the laws and they haven't changed. Importing and selling user terminals without licenses actually undermines the very authority of ICASA, and it also sets a dangerous precedent for other foreign companies. We need clear guidelines to safeguard consumer rights and also to ensure that Starlink and even other companies adhere to our established quality of service standards. Like I stated before, South Africa has already established internet providers. These companies have rightly so lobbied against Starlink's entry, fearing that it will disrupt the market if they don't do it properly. Starlink's entry and reported broader internet access could put pressure on these existing providers, forcing them to adapt or potentially lose customers to some extent. And many would think that that's something that's fair or should happen, right? You're thinking competition is good, but competition that doesn't have to adhere to our local laws isn't really competition, is it? Although it's always very hard to side with them, I think on this one, the telecoms companies are justified in doing what they're doing. Now, those arguing for Starlink to be allowed into the country claim that the South African government's motive is to block Starlink and protect legacy internet monopolies, which charge high tariffs to their customers, which in turn they milk as cash cows. I mean, the country has to get tax somewhere, and allowing entrants like Starlink and the likes to not pay tax isn't the answer either. Maybe the answer is somewhere in the middle. But we must be clear, data prices charged by local telecoms companies must be checked and scrutinized. They're very high. For instance, in neighboring Zambia, a much poorer economy to South Africa's, a gig of data is sold for just $1.30 or 24.60 Rand. But in South Africa, the same data costs almost double, $2.60 or around 50 Rand. The World Bank in 2022 ranked South Africa as the world's most financially unequal country. And the injustice is evident in internet access. 7.5 million low-income South Africans are paying 80 times more than middle and upper-class citizens to browse the internet. This is what Project Sizwe, a non-profit organization, revealed in their 2021 study. We all know that this is happening. We all understand that data is expensive, and we will deal with the telecoms companies, and the Competition Commission is already doing a lot of that work. Prices for data will start to drop. But by the logic of those who want Starlink here, how does it make sense to bring in an even pricier alternative that more people won't be able to afford? Shem, we have to be serious, guys. Activism for activism's sake doesn't make sense. There's also the issue of data security. South Africa, like many nations, has established data residency laws. These laws mandate that certain types of data generated within the country, particularly personal information and sensitive financial data, must be stored on servers physically located in the country, in South Africa. These regulations are also there to protect citizen privacy. Data stored locally falls under South African data protection laws, offering you, the citizen, greater control and even recourse in the case of data breaches. There's also a reduction of foreign surveillance into your data. Also, things like hacking become a little bit harder to do. When data is stored offshore, you could potentially make yourselves vulnerable to access by foreign governments, intelligence agencies, and even nefarious actors. Starlink's current model raises concerns regarding data residency. Data transmitted through Starlink satellites might be routed through servers outside of South Africa. We don't know. And this will potentially violate our residency laws when it comes to data, and it will also expose our information to people who aren't accountable to our courts. If Starlink really wants to democratize connectivity, then maybe they should change their stance and possibly even offer that 30% for broader access non-profit initiatives. The South African government, in collaboration with Starlink and other stakeholders, can explore solutions to make Starlink more accessible to rural areas as part of their license proposals. But again, these type of initiatives would be prioritizing one company and not the industry. So that would still be preferential treatment for one company with no industry upside. Like, I don't know, guys, but I think it's always easier to say that government is being uncooperative. But in this case, the company, Starlink, needs to also give something in order to enter the South African market. That's my view. What's yours? Starlink's absence from South Africa's internet landscape is, for some, a missed opportunity for both the company and the country, for a small sector of the population that would like this type of service. But I don't think that the current pricing that Starlink offers makes sense to most in South Africa. But there are some who obviously clearly need it. Addressing the regulatory hurdles, navigating potential competition concerns, and focusing on the mutual benefits can unlock Starlink's potential in order to bridge the digital divide in South Africa. In some way, I'm not putting that aside, but for me, this actually isn't a complex situation at all. Starlink needs to adhere to South African laws, and they need to give as much as they believe that they are going to get. On this one, I have to side with the government. The South African government has taken a very cautious approach to Starlink's entry, and this reflects a stance of commitment to the responsible development of South Africa's telecoms industry. While the technology offered by Starlink offers exciting possibilities, ensuring fair competition, protecting consumers, and addressing affordability concerns like data security are crucial. Rightly so, we all want better and cheaper internet in the country, but the developmental cost of that can't burden South Africa in the long term by creating a weaker telecoms industry. Otherwise, what's the point? Let's chat in the comments. Thank you for watching till this point. Please check out one of our other videos and maybe they'll just be as interesting as this one. See you in the next one.